Hello everyone and welcome. Today we'll be doing a shadow tactic run with Ragna. So last time I believe I said that increasing max HP doesn't really do a whole lot on Ragna, and it's still mostly true, but there is a lot more use of increasing HP than I thought there was. You have to really go pretty hard into stacking HP to start seeing it, but it does make a difference if you're able to get a lot of it. So starting with an extra 80 at the start of the run is going to help make a big difference with that. And then I'll be taking an extra escape death chance as just like a safety measure for Ragna. Early on, especially, you can die very quickly from lowering your own HP and then taking a lot of damage all at once from playing on high entropy settings. Especially early on, if I go to use a skill and get hit before the HP comes back, it's very easy to just accidentally die on Ragna. So that'll just make things a little bit more safe for this run. I'm not going to turn the enemy damage down, though, or anything else. I'm going to keep it at 75 like I usually play at. If you didn't see my last video, I've been experimenting with turning off this entropy buff here. You can actually turn entropy buffs on and off. Sortichos I don't use anyways, and the difference that it makes with the shops is that in the shops, you can buy tactics, and if you have this on, then tactics above blue rarity will start to show up. I don't want tactics above blue rarity in the shops, because I can buy a white for 100 and resell it for 130. So I make a 30 profit every time I do that, which will add up over the course of the run. And then for blues, they cost 120, and I sell them for 130. So it's not much of a profit there, but it's still free money. And the other thing is, if I'm doing that and I see a tactic in the shop I want, I can take it. If none of the 3 tactics that show up there are one that I want, then I still get something back from it. It just completely removes the RNG element from the shop tactics. So for this one, I'll be taking Attack Shadow Spike with Shadow Puncture, and then Dashing Shadow and Multiple Shadows. Multiple Shadows are going to be really important to start with if you want to run a Shadow Puncture build. You need the multiple shadows from it, and then the increase of having it at gold rarity is very high. You start at maybe 50 or 60%, one of the two, as a chance, and as you promote it up to gold tier, it goes up to a 90% chance, which makes a huge difference throughout the run. So what the red tactic does is make it where when I'm dashing around with the dashing shadows, it'll spawn shadows and then they'll turn into shadow spikes as well. And the shadow spikes are pretty decent just as they are now, but they're going to become a lot stronger throughout the run as I upgrade them. The really nice thing about these two combos, or these two combination of tactics, is that when I'm upgrading my shadow spikes from the attack shadows path, it's also going to upgrade the ones that come out of my dashes as well. And shadows are actually pretty strong in this game. They're not quite on the DPS level of other top tiers, like Frost and Lightning, but they're definitely very good. So I'm going to be doing a mostly similar build to my last Ragna run, but it'll have some extra stuff in it. I want to look for attack upgrades, especially for attack dealing damage in a larger range, and then I want to look for Blood Cane and Soul Devourer. So the way that the Shadow Spike works is you just hit an enemy with your attack or skill, and then after a small delay, a shadow will come out of them and explode. They deal pretty good damage, especially early on in the run, and the interesting thing about them is that it's one of the few tactics that actually becomes stronger based on having some of the high entropy settings. One of the entropy settings means that more enemies spawn in total at the same time, and there can be one shadow per enemy at a time, so having more enemies means more shadows are created, and the shadows are able to do more damage that way. If you want to do this build, there's some things you need to look out for when you're getting your upgrades. You want to go down ranged Shadow Spike. The Death Shadow Spikes really aren't that great, and the reactive ones, you don't really want to be taking hits in the first place. The Shadow Spikes have pretty short range on their own, so having the range increase is really going to help out. And then for dodging shadows, you can take either, or for your dashing shadows, you can take dodging shadow or shadow kickback normally. It's going to depend on if you're playing a melee or a ranged character. If you're playing a melee character, I wouldn't recommend picking up Shadow Enhancement, where shadows dash across a longer distance. The problem with that one is that if you're fighting in melee range and you're doing dashes in the middle of your combo hits to summon the shadows, the extra range on the shadows dodging away are going to make them go way too far away from you and just completely miss a lot of the times. I think I'm going to skip going into tentacles and just focus on the shadow spikes and the dashes. That will allow me to spend more money on HP upgrades and still get quite a bit of potentials at the same time. I also picked up Frost on my skills. I'd recommend doing that if you see it somewhere as you're going. The boss damage of Shadow Spikes isn't too bad. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of the other tactics, where a lot of tactics I consider just completely useless in boss fights. The Shadow setup here does an okay amount of damage to them. It's not going to be like run carrying DPS, but it is a decent amount of damage. The main reason you would take Frost is that it depends on how you're playing it, but Ragna has a lot of SP cost skill, or SP cost combo moves in some of his potentials. So if you're going down those, then Frost will give them a boost. But the main thing I use it for is that Frost on skills does affect SP skills. So it's going to give Black Onslaught which is Ragna's SP skill, a good damage boost. And Black Onslaught is already a very high damage dealing SP skill in the first place. So throwing that on there is just going to make it deal even more, especially if I'm also able to get Frost Burst, because it also multi-hits pretty heavily. I can't remember if I mentioned this on my last Ragna video or not. I kind of don't want to say it because there's a chance that it gets bug fixed if I do, but I think I've already mentioned it at this point on some videos. If you're playing Ragna, you can take Lambda's passive and do something extremely broken with it. So the way that Lambda's passive is supposed to work, it's really, they need to update it, or update the tooltip for it at least. It's one of the things in the game that's not explained well at all. It says when you make an enemy fall, you restore MP. Just knocking down an enemy alone is not going to be enough to get MP back from it. You need to make the enemy fall from a certain height. So you need something that will either lift the enemies up, or in the first area, the ninjas are always spawning in midair a lot of the times, or doing that attack where they'll teleport into midair. If you hit them out of one of those attacks in midair, it's a good way of utilizing the Lambda passive. But I'll have to hope I can remember to show it once I can get to regular enemies. There are certain things that just completely bypass that rule of needing to knock an enemy in a certain height in the air. And Ragna probably has one of the best ones and easiest ones to abuse. I got really unlucky with potentials, so I had to go into this boss fight with only one potential. Really, really not ideal, but I guess it worked out. My tactic damage was enough to carry me for the early fight, and Ragna's just base damages are pretty good as well. But anyways, you wanna look for Soul Devourer and Blood Cane on Ragna. Soul Devourer, even if you're a newer player, I would really highly recommend it. Blood Cane is a little bit more advanced, but the sooner you can learn it, the more effective Ragna is going to be. So with Soul Devourer, you deal more damage and restore more HP at lower HP, but you restore less HP at higher HP. The downside on the end there really doesn't matter at all, because Ragna's already built in a way that you're restoring less at high HP anyways. And that's because of the fact of when Ragna consumes his HP, it's based on the amount of current HP you have. It's not based on max HP, and it's not based on any flat amount. So if you're at like 3,000 HP, for example, which is about what I would be at when I was full HP, it's going to be consuming a lot more HP than when you're all the way down to 1,000. You always reach some kind of middle ground with Ragna, where if you're at full HP, you're never going to heal back the same amount of damage you deal. But as you get lower and lower on HP, you always hit that middle ground threshold of where eventually you're consuming the same amount of HP that you gain back, or you're gaining back a little more. So the other thing that's going to be really important is Shadow Spike upgrades. You could set up your tactics a little bit differently than I have. Just as long as you get Shadow Puncture by the end of the run, you could set it to where you started with Range Shadow Spike and Attack Shadow Spike, and then it'd be more interchangeable to other builds later too. Or you could start with Shadow Spike upgrade and Attack Shadow Spike, and that would also be good for other characters. But once you get the two upgrades, or once you get your Shadow Spikes fully upgraded, and you have all of the dashing upgrades as well, then your Shadow Spikes are really going to take off. So right here, I can easily just hit the group of enemies once, and then a lot of Shadow Spikes end up going off because of it. You can see the damage really isn't that great on its own, but it's something that very easily adds DPS onto your own attacks. Especially, like I said, in the higher entropy runs, where there's so many enemies spawning that you can have a lot of shadows active at the same time. Now that we picked up Blood Cane there, you'll see a very high increase in my DPS. Here's something pretty cool about Ragna. A lot of these gambles you don't want to take on other characters in high entropy settings, because it can be really hard to heal back, but Ragna just does not care at all. I can take the HP minus 50 here, and then now, like I was talking about before, I'm at such a low HP value that I'm going to gain back a lot more HP than I spend here. I wish they would give us a lot more specifics about how some of the healing is calculated. Because I almost feel like I'm healing way more when I'm at really high HP, like I'm doing this run. But I'm not good at math, so I'm not gonna even try to begin calculating how the HP healing works. So with Ragna, if you get the Blood Cane and Soul Devourer, you're pretty much just set for the rest of your run. You can see here I don't really have any other kind of new attacks for my potentials or anything. But Ragna's basic attacks are hitting a lot of damage now. The air version of his attack is also something that deals a ton of damage, regardless of what upgrades you have. So after you get the universal enhancement, this is really bad, but it's okay since I'm on Ragna. After you get the universal enhancements, the potential route that you can go It's basically, with Ragna, just whatever moves you like using. Ragna's able to focus much more on just having, like, a variety of moves, or whatever potential route you want to go, rather than being forced into any specific route for DPS. If you do want the highest DPS route for Ragna, I'm pretty sure it's his dash attack route. His dash attacks get ridiculously strong once you max out some of their upgrades. But it's not nearly as big of a deal as with other characters. Ooh, yes, I love this black market upgrade. It does not show up on my videos enough. The perfect clear is nice, especially if you get it early on like this, but having more exchange points means more potentials, which means my character gets even funner. And in this case, I'll be trying to use a lot of my money to stack HP as well, so we can see the extent of how much the HP matters on Ragna or not. And I don't have any potentials by this point. What is going on with that? Hey, did I even get a single shot in the last area? I don't feel like I did. This is a weird run. But luckily, Ragna's consistent enough that it's not gonna matter too much. Okay, perfect. Here's what I wanted to be going for next anyways. I really like the dead spikes of Ragna. I don't think they're necessarily the strongest thing compared to some of his other potentials, but they're good enough. And they're fun to use with the moving dead spikes, in my opinion. They're also going to synergize very well with this shadow build that I'm running. And this is really not a good stage to be able to show it on. The dead spikes are going to, like, drag a whole bunch of enemies together, and really I want to get them into a corner. But anywhere where they're just all pushed together, it's what I'm aiming for. That way, when the shadow spikes detonate, all of these shadow spikes are stacked into one place, rather than having their damage spread out throughout the entire map. I could take Legacy Black Hole in order to very easily accomplish that, but I don't really like playing with Legacy Black Holes, personally. Not really sure the best way to explain it, but I feel like grouping enemies together and keeping them from being able to attack is part of the gameplay of the game, especially at high entropy settings where they attack more often, and there's more of them spawning. And taking the black hole just kind of bypasses all of that. The black hole groups everything together for you and stops them from attacking. It's also just fun to move around the map as you're like doing your combos and fighting enemies. And the black holes also reduce a lot of that too, where you can just basically stand in one place on the map and let them do a lot of the work for you. This is gonna be a pain in the ass. Luckily, I have Air Carnage Scissors. If you did want to keep going down the Shadow route, you can either mix Summon Tentacle and Legacy Black Hole together. You have to be careful and know which one you want, because you can't stack Violent Tentacle and the black hole collapsing tentacle together. The collapsing black hole tentacles here are very, very good. Like I was saying, especially when having them on autocast with the tentacles, this will just group all the enemies together for you automatically, and it'll make the runs very easy to complete. The collapsing tentacles, I didn't really notice much of a difference in like my damage dealt or anything. But by the time I'm even getting those, I'm so far into the run where tactic damage doesn't really matter anyways. Usually how most of the gameplay goes is that... Man, where are my shops? Tactics will usually carry you through the early parts of the runs, or certain tactics, mainly Frost and Lightning, can carry you through part of some of the later stages too. But in general, tactics are much better early on in the runs than later in the runs. And that goes way more so for high entropy. It's true in lower entropy as well, but since just everything has lower HP and lower entropy, it's not nearly as noticeable. So another thing you want to look for on Ragna, I was talking about this, the dash attack. Attacks in a larger range and now deals more damage with multiple attacks. That's very good to pick up on any build. And then if you want to go like a full DPS build with Frost attacks, you can take all of the dash attack upgrades. There's dash attack upgrades here, and then there's upgrades on the actual dash itself you need to get as well. Ooh, more exchange points for me. And I don't think this is really gonna matter too much. I'll take additional HP, but it doesn't really matter because I can heal. Or do I go for the extra HP? I'm trying to remember how much HP you get out of a shop. Is it only 10% or is it 30%? I'll go for the back for exchange points. There we go, finally I get my exchange. I'm just swimming in money right now. Inferno Divider I think is fun on Ragna if you want to do a lot of combos. I tend to forget to use it for some reason, so I won't pick it up yet. The other attack upgrades would be good here for the damage boost, but I think I'll get Carnage Scissors since it's here. This is another one I like to pick up I don't go out of my way for it to like try and reroll into it, but if I see it, I usually take it. You can hack or slash independently, which will cost less MP. I'll try to explain that one in a minute. Now I'll finally be able to pick up Black Onslaught. That's another one I think you should pick up pretty much any time you see it on Ragna. It's a very, very high damaging SP skill. So here's another one you'd want to take for dash if you're doing the dash attack build. I'm not going to take it this time. It has an effect that I don't really like. It's the first hidden effect here. Halfway through a dash attack, you can press attack to use dash attack again. Maybe I'll go ahead and take it, actually. So I want to show off what else it does. So the other thing is the lunges of dash attack take you a longer distance and deal more damage, during which you can dash again. It makes your dash attacks just way faster to play around. I'm kind of tempted to pick up this Radiance, actually. The damage is going to be nice, but I don't think I can really stay in the Radiance. The problem with Radiance is that it's automatic now, and the range of it is just really, really small, unless you have large Radiance. I'll just pass on it. So now my dash attacks are much faster, and I can chain them back to back, which is a good thing if you're going for like a mass dash attack build with all the DPS put onto it. The reason I don't like it is because it makes it harder to combo dash attack into other things. But you can see how good the damage of the triple dash attacks here are. The reason why it's harder to combo dash attacks into other things with that upgrade is the hidden effect that makes it, if you press attack again, then you just end up going into another dash attack. You have to wait a certain amount of time if you want to cancel dash attack into just a regular hit or your air combos once you have this. If you're just mashing, then you're just going to keep getting more dash attacks out of it. Which is totally like a player skill issue on my part, but it also does slow down the speed at which I can transition from dash attacks to normal attacks, probably. Maybe not, once you consider the speed increase that the dash attacks get. Oh, well, that's what I was talking about at the beginning. It's very easy to randomly die on Ragna. I was trying to look at my shadow spikes there and see if their damage was holding up at all. Which is not ever a good idea in the game. Especially at high entropy, you have to pay attention to what the enemies are doing, because you just take so much damage per hit. I might have gotten hit by a bomb or something at the same time. I have all of the worst debuffs on right now. Well, almost all of them. I have bombs when enemy dies. I have the butterflies coming in. And then I think I have intermittent thunder as well. But where randomly some of the enemies will do like an AoE, a small AoE attack around them. Oh, here we go. Let's see this. That's a lot of shadow spikes going off. Their DPS just hasn't really scaled towards the end of the game. But like I said, that's really not bad DPS, especially because it's just a lot of damage that's going off naturally as I attack. It's not something I have to go out of my way to try and trigger. And I think my sense of, like, game balance has really become distorted. Especially because I found Frost Burst immediately as I started playing the game. So, like, this Shadow Spike damage here is perfectly reasonable for what it should be doing as a benefit to my character, not my main character's attacks. All the tactics don't need to just one-shot enemies for me. I'm just so used to completely broken tactics at this point that even some of the more mid-tier ones, like the Shadow Spikes, seem very out of proportion. I guess I can pick up these Summon Ice Spikes just to stack up my Frost a little bit in boss fights. I don't really know if I want this or not. I might pick it up later, but for now I'll get the attack upgrade first. I was hoping I'd be able to buy a lot more HP throughout this run, but shops have not been on my side this run. Both in terms of just, they've been appearing way less, and not giving me HP upgrades very often. So one thing I mentioned before, and got too busy to go back into... Well, let me do this first. That's a very big problem with trying to explain this game. There's always just so much going on back to back, between me picking up new tactics, or potentials, or just needing to focus on room selections or shop selections. It's very tricky to explain so much while trying to keep the gameplay at least a little bit smooth as well. So anyways, what I had started talking about with Lambda's passive is that normally Lambda's passive requires you to hit an enemy a certain height into the air before it'll give you the MP. But certain moves in this game are just completely busted with it. And the easiest one is Ragna's down air attack. So this here, you can either do 2 air attacks in a row to do it, or you can go directly into it. Oh, hang on. I need to use my SP invincibility here. Look at this shit. This map is completely terrible on the entropy settings. Those those enemies with the blue spirit projectiles are a complete menace. There's so many of them spawning, and the increased attack rate really makes that room in particular, or a couple other layouts where there's a mass amount of them, very, very dangerous. You have to be constantly killing them, but it's hard for some characters to do that when they're spread out like that. Now I forgot what I was trying to talk about again. This is another really nice dash attack upgrade, especially if you're going into the dash attack build specifically. Having extra dodge invincibility frames is never a bad thing. Do I want this? I don't think I really care about it. Nice, more HP. Now we're finally getting up in the high HP amounts towards the end of the run. This heavy strike gives pretty good damage increase to it. I really would have preferred to get it earlier, but it's fine if I didn't. One of the things about the dead spikes is you really want the first upgrade for it, at least where it moves, because once you get that, it becomes a multi-hitting skill instead of just a single hit. It makes it a lot stronger. And then especially now that I've gotten that second upgrade for it, I think it's hitting around 1,000 per hit. It's hard to see the damage hits with all the ice spikes and the shadow spikes going off right now. The nice thing about Ragna is that he basically does not care about the timer settings, where if you run out of time, you start taking damage over time. If you have the Blood Cane upgrade and the other one, you probably don't even need the Soul Devourer as well. But if you have both of them especially, you're just going to be out-healing all of the damage that the timer deals. So anyways, I think I've finished saying it before, but with Lambda's passive that gives you MP back when you knock down an enemy, they need to be knocked a certain amount of height into the air before you get the MP back. Ragna's down attack, or just attack in midair, is one of the examples of a move that you can do it and you'll just get the MP back every single time. It is ridiculously broken, and it's how I'm able to spam my skills so much on Ragna. There are some other moves that do it. I'm trying to think of some of them in particular. Jin has a very, very strange one. It's like... I think if I remember specifically, it's the third hit of his basic combo, but only if you have the unsheathing upgrade for it, and it has to be timed in the unsheath timing. It's very, very strange. The normal version of it does not proc Lambda's passive. The upgraded version does. I don't know if there's something with maybe like the amount. I think it's probably the amount of momentum that the enemy hits the ground with. It's how it's calculating the fall height or something like that. I think it just needs to be high enough to where the enemy takes fall damage, but I think the fall damage is being calculated in some kind of wonky way that's allowing a certain hits to proc the passive. Because if you look very closely when you're doing your down air attacks as Ragna, let me go into a potential here so I can show it. There's like a very small damage number. See there, I did 1700, and then there's like really small damage numbers, a couple of 11s right there. And that's not any of my tactics, because my tactics aren't in here. I'm pretty sure what's going on, it doesn't happen in like my other air attacks. So I think hilariously what's going on is that this game actually does have fall damage. I don't know if I can really... I can't launch him high enough to show it, but this game does have fall damage. And I think Ragna's down air here is applying fall damage, and that's what those 11 numbers are. I don't know what else they would be, especially considering, like I said, the Lambda mechanics require them to fall from a certain height, and I think that's just determined by maybe if they take fall damage or not. That's mostly like a complete guess on my part, but it's an educated guess based on everything I've been able to see. Well, looks like it's time to go into Susano with a bunch of debuffs, but I don't really care. I do care if I die there. It could have been really bad. I kind of got, like, stuck on the edge of the ledge there, I think, when I went to jump, or I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I sort of panicked. Luckily, I have triple dash, and I can just spam the dodge button and pray for invulnerability frames when that thing explodes. So check out the damage of the dash attack here. That's without having Frost on my attacks. If I had Frost Burst, it'd be proccing that really quickly too. The dash is doing around 1,000 per hit, and it should be hitting 3 times. All of my Ragna damage is just so high in general. My jump attack does 1,000, and then the downwards part of it does about 2,000, it looks like. A lot of that is from the damage scaling on Blood Cane and Soul Devourer, the universal enhancements that I said to pick up. And then part of that is also just from the scaling, from how many potentials I have. I don't have a ton of them this run, compared to the Lambda run I did previously. But this is still way more potentials than you would have at lower entropy settings. Man, my HP bar is so big that it's almost off the side of the screen. It would be funny to get a run where the HP bar goes off the screen, but it's just a lot of really luck-based stuff. I think Hakumen would be the best one to do it with, because I think he has the highest starting HP. Another thing that I didn't really have time to mention earlier in the run is that another reason why you want to start learning how to play with Blood Cane is that it constantly stacks your SP skill, which is one of Ragna's strongest moves. His SP skill is charged when you take damage, and it charges much more quickly off of the constant damage you take from Blood Cane, as opposed to the drain from trying to use your skill. The drain from some of the combo effects can be a little bit faster since they take less MP, but either way, having the Blood Cane is going to be a much, much faster way of getting your SP skill back. Anyways, that'll be it for this run. I'll probably have to check on the footage how much the HP increases seem to matter or not, and then I guess I'll put it in the description what I think about it. I need to check the actual footage and see how high of HP I was sitting at throughout the run. But anyways, that'll be it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.